Thank you so much for that intro. As a side note, when I say Bob Ross style painting, I literally have sat and watched Bob Ross and painted along with him. It does not take me 30 minutes. It usually takes me about 5 hours to complete one of those paintings. But you guys should try it out. It's a lot of fun. I am blown away. I'm so excited to have you guys here. How many of you guys had a fun time last night? Yes, it was awesome. Yes, Content Marketing World has been a phenomenal experience for me as well. This is my first time at this conference. It also occurs to me that if I don't do a good job, this might be my last time here. So my fate is in your hands. And we're gonna have a little choose your own adventure thing this morning. So I normally give this as a 90-minute workshop, and so today we're going to be cramming stuff in here. And so I want you guys to kind of decide what the path is that we're going to take. We can either spend a little bit more time diving into some depth with some of the case studies that I have in here. We can go into and get a little bit more detailed in the information. Or if you guys would prefer, at the end of the presentation, I have a few low-hanging fruit tips with tools and other things that you guys can try out on your own site. So how many of you guys would prefer to go into more depth in the presentation? How many of you guys would prefer to go with some of the low-hanging fruit tips at the end? Okay, that is what we're going to do. All right, so I will go through this presentation quickly, and I want to make sure that you guys get your money's worth here, and so we'll jump right in. So I'm going to start out with a test. Let's see if this is working here. Doesn't look like this is working. Let's see if we can get the slide progressing here. Is this, there we go. Okay. I'm going to start out with a landing page test that I ran. I'm going to have you guys look at this. This is for a, well, it's not even important. What I want you guys to do is I want you guys to look at the two designs here. And I want you guys to just guess which one you think performed better. Which one do you think got more form completions? So if you think the one on the left, the green version, got more conversions, raise your hand. Okay. If you guys think the one on the right, the blue version, got more conversions, raise your hand. Okay. Overwhelming majority. I am with all of you that thought that the blue one was going to perform better. However, when we ran the test, the green one performed better, almost 14% better. So the question that I ask myself when I see tests like this is why? Why did that happen? It doesn't look better, right? I mean, all of you who are in any kind of design function, and everyone kind of thinks they're a designer at heart, but anyone who's in any kind of design function thinks that that one on the left looks terrible. The colors don't really look nice together. The one on the right is definitely more of a best practice landing page, right? And so when I look at results like this and I start asking that question of why, one thing that continues to come, so I've been in the conversion rate optimization space now for about 8 years, and time again, I've ran over 1,000 A/B tests at this point, and one thing that has become glaringly obvious to me is it is impossible to predict what is going to work best on an email, on a landing page, on a website, and thus the need for A/B testing. And so what I'm going to talk through today is I'm going to go through 6 things that you should be testing on every email, landing page, website that you have. I'm going to show you guys a bunch of examples of tests that I've run to give you some ideas. And I'm going to go through just really kind of 6 things that comprise your emails and your landing pages that will create a great experience for your audience. And then, like I mentioned, at the end, we're going to go through some low-hanging fruit for both e-commerce and lead gen. I'm going to talk through just a couple of tips and some things that I think you guys should be doing if you're not. So the 6 things that we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about how to make sure you're creating a great value proposition on your landing pages, on your emails, and what that means. We're going to talk about the call to action. How do you make sure that you are creating the right call to action for your emails, your landing pages? We're going to talk about content. This is Content Marketing World. We have to have that in there, right? We're going to talk about, specifically with content, how much content do people want? Because it's really easy to just barf all of our content all over our users. We're going to talk about distractions that are conversion killers. We're going to talk about things that can cause anxiety. and how you can overcome anxiety for users. And then we're going to talk about the mobile experience, which is something that, I mean, that's a buzzword that gets thrown around, but we're going to talk specifically about things that you should think about on your mobile. So let's talk about value proposition first. A few questions that I want you to ask yourself when you're thinking about value proposition is, what exactly is it that you're offering? Now, that could be, what is your company offering? But what I want you to think about is when you're crafting an email or creating a landing page, what is your offer for that email? What is your offer for that landing page? What exactly is it? How is it different or unique? You might think about that in terms of your competition. And then finally, I ask, do you know with data which value proposition resonates with your audience? Which one creates a response in people? Now, most often when I ask businesses, do you know which value proposition resonates? The answer that I get back almost always is yes. And I'll say, how do you know? And people will say, well, we've talked to our audience, or we've talked to our customers. You know, especially entrepreneurs. I talk to my customers. I know my customers really well, and they've told me this and this and this and this. Well, there's an interesting study that was done by Harvard years ago that found that 90% of purchase decisions, and this is true for non-purchase related decisions as well, but 90% of conversion-related decisions are subconscious. Okay? So what that means is, when you are asking your audience, why did you buy my product? Why did you sign up for my service? You're getting 10%. You're getting the 10% that people are aware of. So when you are figuring out, you need data that proves that a specific thing resonates with your audience, because if all you have is word of mouth, you've missed the vast majority of the case. And so finally, this is a fun little economics principle here, but somebody's motivation to convert on your website is equal to the perceived benefit minus the perceived cost. The perceived benefit is, what can you do for them? That's your value proposition. So value proposition is all about increasing the perceived benefit to your user. And there's lots of perceived costs. Okay? If you are selling a product, there is the cost of the product. There's the hassle of going through your website and figuring out how to buy it. There is the hassle of potentially returning the product. If you're a service-based business, it's the potential nightmare they might have to go through talking to you on the phone and getting your emails, or text messages. It's the amount of time and mental effort that they have to expend to read all of your content and to watch your videos and all that stuff. There's lots of perceived costs. And so it is incumbent upon us as marketers to make sure that we justify all of those costs with the value. All right. So let's show some examples so that I can show you guys what I'm talking about here. So every test that I run has a question associated with it. This allows us to learn something from every test we run. So here's an example of a question, and I like to have all of my test questions be an open-ended question, because that guarantees that I will learn something from every test I run. Even if my idea, my hypothesis fails, I still have learned something like, how should we format a value proposition in the email headline? Okay? This is the only example I have of email headlines, because I know those of you who do, how many of you guys do email, by the way, in this room? Almost all of us. Okay, so I'm sure that you guys have read more articles and heard more presentations than you can handle on email headlines. And so I am going to talk about one example, though, that will just kind of show what I'm talking about with value proposition. So here's an example of, and I've got an arrow pointed here so you can see specifically the email headline that I'm talking about. Here's an example of a headline, and headlines have to be chock full of value proposition. Because if somebody, this determines whether or not someone's even going to open your email, right? The headline is really all somebody has to go on when they're deciding whether or not to open your email. And so if they can't figure out, what am I going to get from opening this email, they're not going to click on it. Okay, so here's an example of an email headline that has just, some quick information. Many of you join us for our pre-launch weekend. The email headline's actually a lot longer than that, but that's all you can see on mobile, right? So on the control, that's what we had, right? Now, on the variation, what we did is we really just simplified that second headline. So instead of saying, join us for our pre-launch weekend, we said, pre-launch weekend, and then look at this. We can fit in another value proposition in there that says quality homes. Right? So we basically, all we did is we simplified and we added something. This resulted in a 74% increase in opens of this email. Massive, massive increase in people opening an email just because they were able to determine a little bit more, what is the value I'm going to get from this? It gives a little bit more context to the email or to what the subject or the content of the email is going to have. And ultimately, it resonates more with the audience. So when we're thinking about value propositions, when we're thinking about what value propositions to put in the body of our email, in the body of our landing page, it's just as important what you have in there as it is the format that you have. Because, again, you could write a ton of value propositions that are super long, but typically people can only consume a little bit, and this email headline is a great example of that. Here's another example. What value proposition should we highlight in our reviews? Okay, so this is a company that had video reviews on their website, and video reviews are awesome, they're cool, but next to the video review, the company had pulled out a little snippet from the video, okay, some text that they had put on the site. Now, when I kind of proposed this test initially, the client said, well, it doesn't even matter. They're just going to watch the video, so why does it matter what we put next to it? And I said, I'm going to guess that it matters, but let's find out. So what we wanted to test is what should we actually pull out of the video? This is a value proposition, right? This is those people in the video have said a value proposition. Now, in this case, I would call this a marketing fluff value proposition. This actually, let's see. So I think that I put the wrong one in here. Let me see if it's next. Nope. Okay, so this is supposed to say, this is an amazing company. We loved working with them. One of the variations that we tested that was on the control here that I messed up says, is more focused on the amount that somebody saved by working with this company. Okay, so we went from a fluff message, and I think I have it on the last slide here so that you guys can see what it said. But instead of just saying this is an amazing company, we focused on a money amount savings. Right? Second variation that we tested, this is for a company that sells houses online. This one talked about how quickly you could sell your house or how quickly you could get showings. All right, so the value proposition here is the speed at which you can get people interested in your home. The third one was talking about quality of service. They mentioned a story in here where they reached out to their lawyer at 11 p.m. and the guy picked up the phone. All right, so we tested all of these. Now you can see the original one, amazing technology, amazing people. That's the one I should have had on the first slide. Okay, so I'm just going to have you guys look at these real quick and guess which one you thought performed the best. The one that ultimately ended up performing the best was the one that mentioned the story here. So I thought that the money savings one was going to win because, well, I mean, money, that's a big cost, right? And so saving a lot of money I thought, was going to be the most important thing to people. But when we ran this test, and look at this. So remember, if you remember what I said, the company said, it doesn't matter what we put next to the video. They're just going to watch the video. Well, look at this. We got 26% more conversions, more signups, just by changing the snippet that we pulled out of a video. So what that means is that what we put on our website does matter. What it also means is there's probably a lot of people that weren't actually even watching the video. Or if they were, their frame of reference for that video was the content that we had put on the page. And so we had now framed this around the quality of the experience instead of whatever they were thinking before, amazing company, and they were looking for some justification of that. So it matters. What we push, in terms of the value proposition, what we are highlighting on our site for our value propositions makes a huge difference. And think about this also. If you ran this test and you got this data back that said, okay, we know that the quality of our service and the personal experience that people have with our brand is what matters, how do you think that would influence the rest of your marketing? How would that influence the way that you write content? How would that influence the way you post on social media? How would that influence your ad copy? right? And so gathering this kind of data from your audience and finding these kinds of things out has a huge impact on our overall strategy, or at least it should. So I'm gonna skip past this slide, but just some questions to ask yourself if you were to look at an email or a landing page are the following. So I'm going to move on to call to action. So here's an example. These are my two beautiful daughters. I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And we took them to do family pictures. So we wanted our daughters to take some cute pictures together. Well, what we wanted them to do is we wanted them to stand there and smile. Okay? Now, this is an adorable picture, right? I mean, I wouldn't put it on here if it wasn't adorable. This is an adorable picture, but this is not what we wanted people to do. This is not what we wanted our daughters to do. And the reason that this is the response that we got, the reason this is what we had happen is we said, just stand there and act like you guys love each other. Okay? Now, what I should have said is, put your arm around her and smile. I should have been very obvious and straightforward with what I wanted them to do. And kids are amazing examples of online behavior. Because with kids, if you don't tell them exactly what you want them to do, then they're going to leave it all to their own interpretation. They're going to make up their own thing. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about in terms of call to action. With call to action, we need to be telling our audience exactly what we want them to do. Okay? A bad call to action is something like, start living your life today, right? That's not a call to action. That's up to their interpretation. What does that even mean, right? A great call to action is, get your free life insurance audit today, right? So you want to tell people exactly what you want them to do. One way that I like to think about this is in terms of the 2-second rule. So other psychological studies have been done on user behavior online, and they found that when somebody goes to a new website that they've never been to before, they usually give 2 to 3 seconds to determine whether or not they're in the right spot before they bail. So most of your bounces, when somebody comes to your site and then leaves, most of your bounces happen in 2 to 3 seconds. And so it is critical that in those 2 to 3 seconds, somebody can identify what they're supposed to do. Why is that important? It's not because they're going to take action in 2 to 3 seconds, because most people will not take action and convert in 2 to 3 seconds. But what it does for us is psychologically, when I know what I'm supposed to do, it feels nice. I feel like I've got my crap figured out, right? It's reassuring that I know that I'm not being, it's not a bait and switch kind of thing. It's not like I'm asking you to read all of my content and then I'm going to ask you to sign up for a timeshare, right? I mean, it's like, so in 2 to 3 seconds, somebody should be able to figure out what they should do on your website. And one easy way of doing that is to use color contrast. So designers love to use colors that all blend together and look nice together, right? Designers like to use blues and lots of white space and neutral colors. You do not want your call to action to be a neutral color. Your call to action should stand out. It should be glaringly obvious to people what they should do on your site, because again, it helps psychologically reassure people that they know what to do. So let me show a couple of call to action examples here. So another test question, what's the best way to feature a call to action? This is in an email, okay? So this is obviously a very stylized email. You can see that on the left, we have one single call to action. We have, it's the only one call to action button that says, get my discount now. In the second one, we have multiple call to actions. And the theory here is, well, if somebody doesn't want to take that primary call to action, let's give them some other ones. Let's give them some other options, right? Maybe not everybody wants to get their discount, and maybe not everybody wants to, purchase the toothbrush today. So ran these two against each other, and the single call to action had, look at this, almost 4 times more clicks. 371% more clicks. Again, the question is why? Why do you guys think that it would have that much more of a dramatic impact? And if you look at the two versions here, in version 1, it is obvious what you should do. There's only one thing to do. In version 2, it's really easy to get distracted, and you know what it does is it causes anxiety for people when you have multiple call to actions on an email, because they go, well, I kind of want this, but now I got to read this other thing, because what if they have something that's better? What if I'm missing out on a free toothbrush, right? And so people feel like they need to read everything else, and I mean, it creates too many options. Okay, so again, make it obvious what people are supposed to do. Don't give them too many options. And try to focus on one single call to action on any given page of your website. Another area that I think that is, I see a lot of egregious call to action issues is on home pages of websites. Home pages of websites are like, I mean, I've seen home pages of websites that literally have 30 things that you could do with different products and different services, and sign up for our email newsletter, and you know, follow us on social media, and here's all of our blog posts, and here's some people that have posted about us. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. So you do not want to do that. You want to have a focused approach for your audience, because it's not only beneficial for you, you're getting them to do what you want them to do, and it's beneficial for the audience because it's easier for them to understand. Here's another one. This is a fun one. So this is for a friend of mine, Mike Stelzner, who runs Social Media Examiner. He has several pop-ups on his website, and we're going to talk a little bit more about pop-ups, because this is, I think pop-ups are one of my favorite tools to use for converting people. And if that kind of makes your stomach crawl a little bit, then it's good. We'll talk about that. But so Mike Stelzner uses a ton of pop-ups on his website to gather email addresses. Okay? And so one way that he does that is by giving away this free industry report that he does every year. That is a phenomenal industry report, by the way. If you do any kind of social media, you should download it. But what we wanted to figure out is, what language should we use in the call to action? Now, the reason I like showing this is you guys are probably going to roll your eyes as I'm showing you these variations. So this original one says download now on the button. Okay? We actually tested, before running this test, we ran a lot of different call to actions that were like, get my information, or you know, like things like that, learn more. Download now was the previous winner, and so now we wanted to refine that. So we tested download instantly. Okay? You're going to hear that and go, what the crap, what kind of stupid test is this? That's the exact same thing, right? And then we ran another one, instant download. Again, you're going, come on, Chris, like, why would you run this test? This is stupid. They all say the exact same thing. It's just semantics, right? We tested this on more than, I think, 300,000 users. And instant download increased conversions by almost 13%. It's mind-blowing what happens when you just tweak a few words, right? And the reason is, when we say instant download versus download now, even over download instantly almost sounds like the exact same thing. But instant download, for some reason, that helps people understand this is going to be a quick process, right? That resonates more with people. And one thing that I will just say here is, when you find something on your website that matters to people, so I showed that example of like the video testimonials earlier. When you find something that has a 10%, a 20%, a 50%, a 300% impact on conversion rates, you should test the heck out of that thing until you know exactly what you should say. Because when you find something that resonates, you know that that thing is important to your audience. And so you can't go wrong with running tests like this. Now, I would not test this on all of your websites, because the wording of the call to action might not matter to your audience. But for this particular audience, it mattered a lot. So with call to actions, again, some things I want you to think about are the following. You know, is your call to action easy to identify? Could it stand out more? Do you know the best call to action for your page? And as you are creating new emails, new landing pages, all of these things are things that you should be thinking about testing. Because one mistake that I see most businesses make is when I ask people, when I look at an email, for example, and I say, why did you put this stuff on the email? You want to know the response I get most often? I don't know. Our designer put it together, and it looked nice. Right? And so, but the problem is, if it starts working, they didn't even know why they put that stuff in there in the first place, but now that it's working, then we just forget about it. We go, oh, well, cool, the email's good, let's move on. All right, so let's talk about content. This is why we're all here, right? Content marketing. The questions for specifically that I want to talk about is how much content should you have? And even further than that, how much content does your audience actually want? Okay, and we're also going to talk about where should your content be. Do people want it all when they very first come to your website? Do people want all of your content in an email or on a landing page? Those of us that do SEO in the room are probably going to say, of course. Google wants all of our content on one page, so why wouldn't people want it all? But I have news for you. People do not want all of your content all in one place. On an email, what you need to figure out on an email is, what is the bare minimum amount of content that I can have on my email that will get someone to click? Because if I give somebody too much information, it might resonate with one person, but a lot of other people are going to start talking themselves out of it. And you haven't even had a chance to convert them on your landing page yet. If you give people too much information on the home page of your website, they're not going to click through to your product page or to your services page or to your lead flow page because they're going to get lost in the content. Maybe they'll even like your content. But now they've already spent so much time reading it that by the time you get them to your conversion page, you're going to start reiterating all the content that you had before, and you're going to lose people. So you want to give just the right amount of content at each step of your conversion funnel. And then lastly, what format should you use for your content? I'll show an example of that one. But format makes a big difference. Should we show giant paragraphs of content? Should we show bullet points of content? Should we have images with our content? Those are all questions that you should be asking. I would assume that as content marketers, we all really like to write content that is easy to scan, where we use lots of bullet points. Maybe we like to write, big paragraphs of content. Maybe we like content that is just one sentence and then another sentence and then another sentence that are all somewhat unrelated. There's not a right or a wrong approach to writing content, but there is a right or a wrong approach to how you should format it or what will resonate best with your audience. So let me show you a couple of examples here. So let's see here. Okay, this is how we format our content on an email. So this is another big topic that you guys have probably heard a lot about, is should we use stylized content on our emails versus just text-only content on our emails, right? Some of the arguments for not doing this is, well, some browsers, some mobile devices can't render all of the HTML on here, right? The images won't show up, the button won't show up, it'll show as a hyperlink anyways, and so let's just show the simplistic version of this, right? But here's what we have here is we have two pieces of content, same exact content, stylized in two different ways. Simplistic and nicely designed. This is one that's different than the first case study I showed. In this one, the stylized content produced 64% more clicks. Okay? Now, again, the content is literally verbatim the exact same content. But here on an email that we're sending out, the way that we have presented this content with an image, with a button instead of a hyperlink, it resonates a lot better with the audience. It's easier for them to consume. And I mean, if you look at the stylized version, it almost like visually, there's a lot of visual hierarchy that takes you through this email in a way that doesn't feel like you're reading a giant block of text. But the version on the right, it just feels like you're reading a ton of text, right? So doing HTML, like stylized emails, absolutely is a must, I think, in almost every case. Now there are ways that you can still have this version if the images can't render, but I always recommend creating stylized emails when you can. How much content should be above the fold? This is another friend of mine, John Lee Dumas, that does EF Fire podcast, and he sells this thing called the Freedom Journal. Now, when I asked him, this is the landing page that people come to, And now you could scroll down, and there's a lot of content down below the fold. But I asked him, I said, why? How come you don't have any content above the fold? And he goes, why do I need content above the fold? And I said, well, why wouldn't you need content above the fold? And he said, well, people are coming from my podcast. I already told them what the journal is. I already told them why they should buy it, so they don't need to hear the content. And I said, well, let's find out. So we ran a variation of this page where we literally just moved some of the bullet points that were lower on the page. We moved them up to up above the fold. Okay? Ran those two versions against each other and had almost a 20% increase in orders on this book by moving that content up. Now, what did that tell us? Well, first it told us that just because somebody came from the podcast doesn't mean they don't want more information, right? I mean, when I'm listening to a podcast and something resonates with me, I'm not usually sold at that point. It's not like when somebody mentions a book to me on a podcast, I'm like, I'm going to go buy that right now. Usually it's like, huh, that's interesting. I want to hear more about that, right? And so you go, you check out the website. What it also told us is where that content is matters. If we don't give people enough information when they very first get to this page, they're going to leave. So it's critical to figure out even positioning on a page can have a huge impact. There's another question. How much content and what format does the audience want? It's another one from that Social Media Examiner website. So on this pop-up, there's this paragraph of content right in the middle. And my question was, is that the content that people want? So we ran some variations here. Had one variation where we stripped down that content to basically one sentence. Well, it's like a sentence and a half, but we pulled out some of the extra stuff that was in the content. Okay? So we just, I mean, this is like just value propositions, basically. We had another version that had the exact same content, word for word, except broken up into bullet points. How have you guys guess which one you thought performed the best? How many of you guys think the paragraph version performed the best? How many of you guys think the bullet point version performed the best? Okay, how many of you guys think the simplistic version performed the best? Okay, I'm on the same page with you guys that thought the simplistic version was going to work best. Okay, again, we ran this test on close to 500,000 people. Both of those versions decreased conversions. It's like, what? Like, how could, I mean, and none of us guessed that version, that the original version was going to win. So this is, again, where it's like, well, obviously for this audience on this website, having a paragraph of content is better than having bullet points of content that says the exact same thing. Format matters to our audience. Okay? So I'm gonna again skip past this in the interest of time here. Here's another picture of my kids. Told them to go clean your room. Like 30 minutes later, this is what I found. And this goes back to the call to action principle. What I needed to say is pick up all your toys. Maybe they thought this was clean. But what happened here? So the kids went into the room, and what happened? They got distracted. They started playing, right? It's like, wow, look at all these toys. There was too much stuff for them. Too many things. Okay, that happens with our audience all the time on our websites. I showed an example on the call to action thing, where if you have too many call to actions, but the same thing happens with anything else on our website. Distractions are conversion killers. And like I mentioned, out of the thousands of tests that I have run, out of the hundreds of businesses that I have worked with, every single company has had at least one thing on every page of their website or email that is hurting conversions. So hopefully that gets you thinking, what could possibly be on my site that's hurting conversions? So things that typically hurt conversions, I mean, all of these things can hurt conversions. Videos, links, any contrasting colors on your website that's not your call to action, or maybe even your call to action. Almost anything on your site can be a distraction. So again, what you have to figure out is what is distracting people on our site. Okay, so I'll show you guys an example here of a company that sells Disneyland tickets. I love this company because I love Disneyland. And so this is on one of their landing pages where you can book a vacation. They also have a lot of other information that's down below the fold. that you can see here with other offers. They have, like a little sub-menu down there where you can, navigate through and see some of their other stuff. The hypothesis here was maybe people don't want all that, so let's just test a very simple version of this page where we cut out all the crap below the fold and just basically have the hero offer. So we ran those two against each other. We ended up with 7% more conversions by cutting out all of the other offers, right? And again, most of you guys will think, well, I can't take stuff off my site. What if it resonates with somebody else? The bottom line is you want to do one thing really, really well. You want to resonate with the one person that is ready to convert, and you want to do it so well that they can't not convert, right? Because if somebody comes to your site and they're ready to convert, but then they get distracted, I mean, that sucks. Even if you gained somebody else that came to your site that wasn't planning on converting, you want to make sure that anybody that comes to your site that's ready to convert can convert, and they can do it easily without getting distracted. So I have a lot of other examples I could show you guys if you're interested, but I'm going to basically just have you guys think about that and noodle on that. What could be distracting people on my site? Okay, anxiety. You never want people to feel more anxiety than they're already going to feel. People already feel anxiety when they come to websites where they have to do something. And so what you want to think about is could there be anything that's confusing, anything that's unclear, anything that's alarming, anything that's frustrating? Okay? Because again, it's already there's already just an inherent amount of effort that somebody feels like they have to go through to convert on your site. So you want to make it seem as simple as possible to convert. So here's an example. This is from Social Media Marketing World, where we have multiple options of tickets that you could sign up for. Okay, these kinds of charts always cause anxiety because there's just so much information. What we wanted to figure out is, well, what anxiety could they be feeling here? Well, one of the things that we identified is, well, once I find the package that I want, I can't do anything about it because there's no call to action here, right? There's no pricing information either. So I don't know exactly what all this stuff means. So we ran one variation where we just added a call to action button down at the bottom. Another variation where we added the button and the price. Now, Mike did not like this because the price is really expensive. And he thought there would be sticker shock. But we ran all these three against each other, and the version that had the button and the price increased conversions substantially. Because again, it reduced some anxiety. People knew at least what they were getting into. And the other benefit here is now I'm showing the price next to the value. So people can see the price right next to the value. And that's pretty critical. We then ran a follow-up test where we highlighted the most popular option, and that further increased sales because it made it more simple for people to see which one they should buy. So again, you want to just think about what could be causing anxiety for people on my emails, my landing pages. Finally, for mobile, and I'm going to go quickly through this so that we can get to some of the low-hanging fruit tips. But one thing I want to point out here, if you are saying that my site works on mobile, then you're thinking the wrong thing about your website. Like, I mean, in 2019, we should be beyond responsive websites. We should be at a place where we have a customized mobile experience. That's true for email, and it's true for landing pages. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys just some quick examples here, okay? The version on the far left is what we started with for this particular client. I mean, this website should have just been taken out behind the barn and shot because it was just, I mean, that's one where you go, it works on mobile. It's like, but I guarantee it doesn't work on mobile. So what we did is we tested two different designs, look exactly the same call to actions. We've just stylized them and we've added a headline, right? So we tested these two versions against each other. I would have you guys vote and guess which one you thought worked best, but I'm just going to show you guys the results here. Look at how differently these two versions performed. Exact same content on both of these variations. Like identical content. The only thing that's different here is the mobile experience, the design. Okay? So look at, I mean, the version on the far right, the blue version, performed 4 times better than that middle version. And by the way, it performed about 10 times better than the original. how we create our mobile experiences, how we show, visually, how we show the mobile experience matters. And you can have massive increases. I mean, if any of you in this room have thought, well, mobile is just a place where people research. People research on mobile, and then they come back and convert on desktop. That's because your mobile experience is not good enough. Because people do convert on mobile. I've seen people purchase several $1,000 products on mobile and sign up for several $1,000 services on mobile. There is no product or service that you cannot convert somebody on mobile if you have the right mobile experience. And then finally, this is just some food for thought. For this particular company, we decided to try something that was kind of like an app-style navigation. We want to think about, again, how can we make it as easy as possible for mobile users to navigate our site? So we added a simple navigation that was at the bottom, that was omnipresent. We put in a few of the most popular categories in there, and increased conversions by 12%. There's lots of cool things that you can do on mobile. If you're interested in hearing some other things, you guys can come and chat with me afterwards. So let's jump in here to the low-hanging fruit in the last couple of minutes that we have, and then I would love to answer questions if you guys want to come up and chat with me afterwards. So one thing, I mentioned this earlier, exit intent pop-ups. If you're not doing an exit intent pop-up, start doing it. One reason people don't like exit intent pop-ups or time delay pop-ups is they feel obtrusive. Feels like it invades your mobile or your web experience. And by the way, there are mobile exit intent pop-ups that you can do, and I can tell you guys about that. But if people start doing a fast scroll up to go up, so that on Safari on mobile, if you scroll up real quick, then your little navigation bar pops down. So there are ways to show exit intent pop-ups on mobile. But here's a few tools that are my favorite. The ones I showed on Social Media Examiner, they use Opt-in Monster. That's one of my favorites. Unbounce actually has pop-ups that you can use. Unbounce is also a landing page tool that is phenomenal if you haven't used them. And then Privy is another great tool, and they have all kinds of other tools that you can use. But exit intent pop-ups are one of the best ways. When somebody's going to leave your site, you might as well capture some information from them while you're at it. And you can also ask them questions, like survey questions. You can gather information. I mean, exit traffic is one of the most underutilized traffic on the web. And so get some value out of those people if they're going to bail on your site anyways. Here's an example of an exit intent pop-up that Social Media Examiner does. When you start leaving their website, this is just an example of something that they will offer. Okay, cart and checkout abandoned emails. If you have an e-commerce website, if somebody adds something to your cart and doesn't check out, you should be emailing them. So there's some cool tools where you don't even have to have their email address in order to email them, but you can have emails sent to them saying, hey, you still have something in your cart, by the way. And so some cool tools to check out if you do e-commerce. And then finally, there's a landing page content test that is really simple that you can build in like less than a half an hour on a blog post or on a landing page. Here's an example of one that I ran where we had 3 different versions of a page. Here's a heat map that we ran on it, where we had a short version, a medium version, a long version. And this is an example of how much time on the page they spent on each version of this page and how many people got to the bottom of the page, which was really fascinating. And we ran these against each other and found that we had 2 different winners. We had a mobile winner that was the shortest version, a desktop winner that was the medium-length version, and those percentages are how much we increased conversions by testing just the amount of content. So like I said, you can set that test up really quickly. I'd love to help any of you guys answer any questions you guys have about that. And then this is, you guys can check the slide out later, but this is just an example of if you guys are interested in diving deeper into A/B testing, here are some things that that I help work with companies on teaching them. And so if you guys would like to have me take a look at your guys' conversion funnel, feel free to go to my site, smart-cro.com. I'd love to audit any of your guys' sites, either while we're here at the conference or after the conference, and give you guys feedback. So please go check that out, and I'd love to chat with you guys. And thank you guys for letting me run through all this.